It's a squirrel. It's a bird. It's a kite? No! It's the vegetarian night stalker of Southeast Asia.
Today, we're in the primate uncanny valley.
We have so much in common with these wide-eyed weirdos, but we're also so different. They glide, they have comb teeth, and they're 5 times lighter than your head.
What mysteries do they hold? And what can we learn from them? This is the strangest almost primate in the world, the Colugo. Hi, I'm Danielle Dufault, and you're watching Animalogic. Colugos are a bit of an evolutionary anomaly. Hey everyone, we have exciting news! We're thrilled to announce the release of Animalogic's very first book, Strange Creatures. This book dives into the most incredible animals we've ever featured on the show, with each chapter packed with my illustrations and stunning full-color images. It's a fun and engaging way to learn about the animal kingdom, and a perfect tool to spark kids' interest in science. Each chapter breaks down an animal's biology, behavior, and all the coolest facts you need to know about these fascinating creatures. Animalogic's Strange Creatures is a must-have addition to your own library, or the perfect gift for an animal lover this upcoming holiday season.
Click the link in the description to check it out. And if you can, order a copy. It would mean the world. Thank you so much, and I hope that you love the book. Colugos are sort of the mutant love child of a tarsier and flying squirrel. Their lifestyle is pretty similar to those of other gliding mammals, who mostly eat fruits and nuts and have evolved to jump from tree to tree. For small animals like these, the air is safer than the ground, which is swarming with carnivores. Flying squirrels are possibly the most well-known gliding mammals, but this is a successful strategy that has evolved independently several times over many different orders. In marsupials, gliding has evolved, among others, in the Pitoris genus, which includes sugar gliders and mahogany gliders, and the Petoroides genus, also known as the great gliders. There are also over 50 gliding rodent species around the world, with different species of flying squirrels making up most of them. The most charismatic of these are probably the Siberian flying squirrels. They are just way too cute. They always look like they're mustering up the courage to ask another flying squirrel out on a date. But Colugos are different. There is something lemur-like to them, which initially earned them their nickname, the Flying Lemurs. That moniker is wrong, but not by much. DNA tests have shown that they're our closest relatives outside of primates.
If you don't really see a resemblance between a Colugo and, say, a gorilla, it's because our evolutionary paths diverged during the Cretaceous, when dinosaurs were still hunting little mammals. That's a lot of time to change and adapt to new environments.
There are only 2 remaining Colugo species. The Philippine Colugo lives in the southern Philippines, especially in the islands of Mindanao and Bohol. This is the biggest of the 2 species, at just about 1.5 kilograms. It has a mottled coat and a wide face.
They're kinda like the pit bulls of the Colugos.
And then there's the Sunda Colugos, which live in Southeast Asia, from Thailand to Indonesia. They're a little smaller, have solid brown or ginger coats, and a much more delicate little face. They're basically Colugo greyhounds.
But let's stop beating around the Colugo's bushy tail. You came here to see these puppies fly. Look at them go!
Colugos have a sort of built-in kite that extends from their wrists to their ankles. It's the maximum amount of coverage that you could have without growing giant wings like bats.
Their squirrel suit is called the patagium, and it's made of leathery skin. On top of that, they have webbed feet that maximize the surface they have to glide.
To travel between trees, they climb as high as possible and then jump. With their patagium fully outstretched, they can glide for up to 200 meters, but jumps of 20 or 30 meters are most common.
As you can imagine from their shape, Colugos are not great walkers. Climbing and gliding are their 2 main methods of transportation, and falling to the ground can be deadly.
Southeast Asia is teeming with predators. While on the tree canopy, Philippine eagles are the greatest threat.
But on the ground, several small cat species, as well as foxes, dogs, and dholes, can easily catch a Colugo.
And so, their entire evolutionary history consists of adaptations to help them traverse the forests by climbing and gliding, and doing it at night when there's no birds of prey around.
Have you ever walked in a forest at night without a lamp on? It's terrifying. Colugos do that every night while jumping into the void.
Their huge eyes come equipped with giant retinas that give them the night vision and depth perception needed for their leaps. Weirdly, despite being nocturnal, they're thought to have some color vision.
Primate color vision evolved after we split off from Colugos, but it seems the building blocks were there already, and the ability to see ripe fruit from afar evolved in both orders independently. Besides predators and gravity, the Colugo's biggest problem is rough landings on trees. But wouldn't you know it, they also have adaptations to protect themselves and their babies from harsh landings.
They have an inbuilt gyroscope that helps them control their speed along the X and Y axis. When they're in glide mode, they're almost perfectly horizontal, so they don't descend as quickly. But when they're about to reach their destination, they swivel themselves upwards. This slows them down on the X-axis, but makes them fall more quickly. So they have to do it at just the right time so that they don't fall to the predator-rich floor.
With all the predators around, it's too dangerous to leave the babies alone in the nest, so mom takes them wherever she goes.
Colugo babies are born underdeveloped, almost as underdeveloped as marsupial babies. From birth, they attach themselves to the mom's belly. The mom uses her tail to build a little pocket for the babies, making a pseudo-pouch or baby carrier.
And so, moms will carry the babies for months while she's out foraging, and will slowly introduce them to solid foods.
Colugos have a really well-developed digestive system, as they need to eat a lot of fiber. When available, the majority of their meals are fruit salads, with the occasional lichen dessert to get extra minerals.
In times of scarcity, they chew on ants, bark, leaves, and other plant matter.
Their comb-like teeth have the dual purpose of stripping away hard materials, like lichens and tough skin of some fruits, and being a pretty efficient brush to groom themselves to get rid of ticks and other parasites.
Partly because of this diet, Colugos are known to have a very high parasitic load in their guts. It's so bad that their feces have been reported to move around due to the sheer number of worms in it. But don't worry, we're not going to show you that. Or are we? No, we're not.
Both Colugo species are considered least concern due to their large range. But there is actually some concern due to the rapid deforestation of the region. Colugos live in areas that are quickly developing. There are simply fewer trees, and those that are still there are more spread apart. In some areas, roads are being built, which brings the additional danger of being run over by cars.
There is a current initiative to protect Colugo populations by building gliding posts, which are basically utility poles in the middle of the forest or alongside roads. Colugos can use them as platforms and shorten the distance between trees.
We're still learning about Colugos, and with the conservation projects in place, we're hoping we can see these little guys thrive. Not all monkeys are born equal. Some are a little more unique, with surprising swimming skills, a statement potbelly, and, oh, had you noticed its nose is as big and bulbous as Squidward's? This is the Proboscis monkey.
Proboscis monkeys are Old World monkeys, endemic to the island of Borneo.
You can find the monkeys in mangrove forests and swamps along the island's coast and rivers. This unique-looking primate gets its name from its giant schnoz, which can grow up to 10 centimeters long. For mammals, the word proboscis means an elongated nose, like a tapir's trunk or an anteater's snout.
So proboscis monkey pretty much means long-nosed monkey, which is appropriate because look at that thing.
Their noses hang so low that the monkey has to push it aside to put food in their mouth. The male monkeys are the ones with the floppy honkers, while females have a smaller, upturned nose. But it's not just the nose that's bigger on the boys.
Obviously, I'm referring to their bodies.
Males are about 50% heavier than the females and are one of the largest monkeys in Asia. Their long coats come in bright orange, reddish brown, and yellowish. Their underfur is a light gray, their tails are long, and their stomachs are large and swollen. Another distinctive feature, the male's bright red penis and black scrotum. Proboscis monkeys mainly eat fruits and leaves. The odd time, they've been known to mix things up with flowers, seeds, and even insects. But their go-to is mostly unripe fruit from January to May, and mostly leaves from June to December. Their bulging pot-belly stomach is made up of chambers containing a special bacteria that helps the monkey break down the large amounts of leaves they eat. Recently, scientists discovered that some of these monkeys chewed their cud in the same way cows do. They were spotted regurgitating their food and giving it another chew. You may think it's gross, but it actually helps with their slow digestion. The proboscis monkey is one of the only primates that does this.
Another thing that sets them apart from other monkeys is they're great swimmers.
Proboscis monkeys love the water and are capable of traveling across rivers and swimming as deep as 20 meters below the surface.
Their partially webbed feet help them with paddling and walking on slippery banks.
These monkeys also love to jump off tree branches and belly flop into the water.
Sometimes they jump from heights of up to 15 meters. That's gotta hurt.
When they're not in the water, proboscis monkeys are doing the classic monkey thing and hanging out in trees. They're incredibly social animals and usually live in troops that average between 10 to 30 monkeys. These groups contain one dominant male and up to 10 adult females, and they're young.
There are also all-male bachelor troops and the odd male who lives on his own.
Proboscis monkey groups aren't particularly territorial or competitive with one another. At night, troops will join up to the rest and sleep in adjacent trees. During the day, they'll get together to travel, forage, feed, and watch out for each other. It's the female's job to lead the search for food and care for offspring. The male is on defense. He scares off potential predators by making loud, honking sounds, baring his teeth, and roaring.
And despite their large size and mostly tree-dwelling lifestyle, there are predators who want a piece of the proboscis monkey.
On the ground, there are clouded leopards. In the water, there are hungry crocodiles. That's where those webbed feet and hands come in handy. Swim, monkey, swim!
Now, let's get back to the reason you're all here. The monkey nose. That statement schnoz isn't just beautiful, it has a personality of its own.
When the male monkey is angry or excited, his nose has been known to become red and swollen. It can also help the primate produce a loud, bellowing sound, which can be used to alert danger or as a mating call.
And I'm sorry to tell you this, but the rumors are true. The bigger the nose, the more sexually attractive the male is to the female. Go figure.
When it's time to mate, the male will grab the female by the ankles or torso and mount her from behind. While copulating, both monkeys will make a pouting face.
Sometimes males will vocalize, and females may present their backsides and shake their heads from side to side, like some kind of reverse twerking.
If their efforts are successful, the female will become pregnant. Around 6 months later, she will give birth to one infant. They will be born with a deep blue face and almost black coat.
Don't worry, the male proboscis is the father. The baby will change colors in 3 to 4 months.
During the first year of its life, the baby won't leave mom's side. However, once she welcomes another infant, she'll have to cut the apron strings. After that, the female young will typically continue living in the group, but the boys have got to leave. He might join an all-male bachelor group, and one day he may lead a troop of his own.
I guess that'll all depend on how big his nose is.
Proboscis monkeys live between 15 and 20 years. They are listed as an endangered species, and as you can probably guess, their dwindling numbers aren't because of crocodiles. It's because of humans. Their habitat is being destroyed by deforestation, mainly due to logging and clearing the land for palm oil plantations. The monkeys are also targeted by hunters as they're considered a local delicacy.
But in recent years, the capture and killing of proboscis monkeys was made illegal, and conservation laws have been written to help protect these big-nosed beauties.
Behold! The greatest impersonator of the animal kingdom. This small cephalopod can be found in the shallow waters of the Indo-Pacific. Or maybe more accurately, it can't be found in the shallow waters of the Indo-Pacific. That's because it's often pretending to be something else entirely. This is the master of disguise, the mimic octopus. The mimic octopus is an underwater changeling with the power to seemingly transform into other species at a moment's notice. At just 60 centimeters maximum, the mimic octopus, officially known as Thaumoctopus mimicus, is quite demure compared to its largest cousin, the giant Pacific octopus, which can reach up to 4 meters across. Most octopus species share the ability to change their color, shape, and texture in the blink of an eye. In the case of the mimic octopus, they take it a little further, doing a complete quick change faster than you can say, "I'll have the octopus ceviche." Camouflage in nature is used to help prey avoid being eaten. In some cases, camouflage is also used by predators to get close to prey without being detected. This adaptation is a serious evolutionary flex. Camouflage tactics usually involve blending in seamlessly with the background. But for a creature as talented as a mimic octopus, the point of changing its appearance isn't to blend in. It's to stand out and scream, "Come at me, I dare ya!" Researchers have reported seeing these octopuses transform into everything from mantis shrimp and giant crabs to seahorses and starfish. But their preferred disguise is that of creatures that are packed with dangerous venom. This intimidating facade ensures that any predators floating by are fooled into thinking this otherwise delicious octopus is something that's definitely not on the menu. Like many adaptations, the mimic octopus got so good at mimicking because of its chosen habitat, in the open sandy shallows near river mouths. These areas are teeming with predators like large bony fishes, sea snakes, and sharks. To stay hidden, most of the time they'll either be peeking out of their burrows or camouflaging motionlessly with their surroundings. But as soon as they have to move, their cover is blown. That's when it becomes very important to pretend you're someone else. The octopus, for example, puts on a venomous disguise, dressing itself up as a lionfish. After matching the lionfish's distinct stripes, the octopus mimics its venomous spines by holding its flattened tentacles up around its body. Not many creatures have the blind courage to swallow a spiny and venomous lionfish, so this disguise works quite nicely as a warning to would-be predators. Here, the octopus raises its crimped tentacles to mimic a sand anemone, which packs a toxic sting. In order to sell the deception, the mimic octopus does more than just transform its appearance. It even adopts its target species' movements and behaviors. Hey, it might not fool you, but it certainly fools its predators. When it transforms into a venomous jellyfish, for example, the mimic will wave its tentacles the same way a jelly does, as it propels itself upwards through the water. Here, we see a mimic octopus transforming into a banded soul before our very eyes. By holding its arms flush against its flattened body, the octopus can easily pass for this poisonous fish. When in soul mode, the octopus glides across the bottom just like the fish to fully sell its clever disguise. Here, an octodaddy takes the shape of one of the world's most venomous snakes, the banded sea crate, to ward off potential predators. It achieves this threatening look by pulling 6 of its tentacles out of sight, and stretching out the remaining 2 in opposite directions. It then, of course, dons the striking black and light gray stripes that are the hallmark of this highly venomous snake. Here is a mimic octo pretending to be a moray eel, a fish that packs a powerful bite and whose colors resemble those of venomous snakes. So this octo may actually be mimicking a non-venomous eel who itself is mimicking a venomous snake. Things can get very meta on the seafloor. If mimic octopuses weren't shape-shifting enough, they are often mistaken for their closely related but smaller cousin, Wonderpus photogenicus, otherwise known as the Wonderpus octopus. Admittedly, they do look quite similar, but there are a few small differences, most notably the long eye stalks of the Wonderpus, which give it an adorably cartoonish look. Both the Wonderpus and the Mimic have Oscar-worthy acting abilities, but even though the Wonderpus has more charisma, the Mimic seems to have more range, at least for what researchers have observed in the wild. Octopuses can color change thanks to specialized cells called chromatophores, located just below the surface of their skin. The center of each chromatophore cell contains a sac of pigment in colors like black, brown, orange, or yellow. To change color, each sac stretches or shrinks to give the right hue. Not only can octopuses change color, they can also change texture. Projections on the skin, called papillae, adjust to create textures ranging from smooth to bumpy. A true testament to their ability to hide in plain sight is the fact that mimic octopuses weren't even discovered until 1998. Our very limited experience with these incredible mimics means that we're just at the beginning of our understanding of what they can do. Right now, we don't even know for certain the extent of the mimicking capabilities of these octopuses. Scientists believe that we've only seen a fraction of the disguises these mimics can do. Who knows? Maybe your favorite YouTube show is run by mimic octopuses pretending to be nature documentary filmmakers.
It's not a plant, it's not an animal, it's not a fungus either, though it has been known to act like one. It's not even a mold, despite its name. This creeping goo is older than the dinosaurs and is proof that you don't need a brain to be smart. These are slime molds.
Today we're talking about the ooziest organisms of them all. No, I'm not talking about Slimer from Ghostbusters. I'm talking about ooey gooey slime mold.
Slime mold is in a category all of its own, since it's not a plant, animal, or fungi. It's actually technically an amoeba that lives in the soil. Amoebas are any single-celled organisms that have the ability to crawl, but different amoeba species aren't necessarily super closely related to each other.
Generally speaking, all amoebas, including slime molds, are enclosed by a cell wall and have at least one nucleus, which acts as the information center of the cell and controls and regulates its activity.
These slimy amoebas can be found everywhere. There are around 1,000 known species, and they come in a huge range of colors. They live all over the world, but they prefer the warm and damp forest floor of the tropics, where they have access to rotting vegetation and can feed on bacteria, fungi, and yeast. There are, however, some species that thrive in arid deserts and the cold of Antarctica.
Some slime molds have endearing nicknames, like living creepies, demon droppings, rotting mucus, and even dog vomit. I wonder what that last one looks like. Yeah, I don't know what I was expecting, but it's not good. No.
Slime mold is a bit of a blanket term for a bunch of organisms that look and act similarly, but they can be separated into two broad categories, cellular and plasmodial. Cellular slime molds operate solo, but when they do encounter a food source, they'll put out signals to their friends and family to join the feast. These individuals will then form a mass and goo around as one, but each still remains a single cell. This type of cellular slime mold is almost always microscopic and can't be observed with the naked eye.
Plasmodial slime molds, otherwise known as myzomycetes, or true slime molds, can be seen with the naked eye and act very differently when they pile on.
The most famous and well-studied of the true slime molds is the highlighter yellow Physarum polycephalum, which translates to many-headed slime.
Like cellular slime molds, plasmodial slime molds turn into a pile of creeping goo. But in their case, when they form a mass, called a plasmodium or supercell, they become one single oozing unit.
When these true slime molds band together, the cell walls between them disappear, and all of the nuclei operate as one. This mass is full of a system of veins, which are filled with a jelly-like substance called protoplasm. Wrapped around the veins are long strands of proteins which squeeze and relax, causing the protoplasm inside to pulsate forward.
It's a system of locomotion that's utterly unique and definitely kind of unsettling. Unsurprisingly, the 1958 cult horror film, The Blob, was inspired by slime mold.
Slime molds have receptors that give them a form of senses. They can smell if food is nearby and see by detecting light. They can even sense moisture and pH level. The direction of the slime mold's pulsing is in response to the signals these receptors are picking up. With Physarum polycephalum pulsating at about 1 centimeter per hour at room temperature, it can respond to these signals at an impressive pace.
While slime molds don't have brains, they do exhibit pretty incredible behavioral intelligence. As far as a pile of goo goes, they can act much more intelligently than researchers ever expected.
Several studies have shown that slime molds will consistently find the most efficient pathways between sources of food. One study famously placed oats, which slime molds go crazy for, by the way, in the same configuration of the major hubs of Tokyo, and the slime molds were able to almost exactly mimic the subway system.
Japan's railway system, one of the most efficient in the world, was painstakingly created over decades by the best and brightest engineers, but the slime mold managed to accomplish the same efficiency in a single day.
To arrive at their highly efficient routes, first, the slime mold fans out to explore its territory. Once it finds sources of food, it'll strengthen the most direct pathways between them and let less efficient routes dry up.
If that's not smart enough for you, they've also been known to anticipate events.
In another study, slime mold was exposed to unfavorable dry and cold conditions at regular intervals. In response, growth slowed during those periods. But before the next regular period of unfavorable conditions even began, the slime mold had already slowed its growth in anticipation of what was to come.
It actually learned the pattern of these spells and took measures to protect itself before it was hit by the next wave of dry cold. I need you to know that where I come from, it's not uncommon to see people walking around in shorts in the snow. So you tell me, who sounds smarter?
In yet another experiment, a small bridge was covered in salt with a yummy snack placed on the other side. Slime mold isn't harmed by salt, but it definitely doesn't like it. In a journey that would normally take an hour, the slime mold first needed 10 to reach the treat while navigating the salt. On each progressive day, however, the slime mold needed less and less time to cross the unpleasant salt to reach its snack. Within a few days, it was breezing over the salt in an hour, as if it wasn't even there.
Pushing that experiment further, this first blob of slime was introduced to another that had no previous contact with salt. And within a few hours, even the new blob had learned to be okay with salt. So slime molds are capable of a kind of teaching and learning, which, if you ask me, is pretty damn smart.
To germinate, similar to mushrooms, slime molds will sprout up fruiting bodies that throw spores. And these spores can travel. Genetically identical samples of slime mold have been found in both New Zealand and the US, meaning that the spores somehow managed to make it more than 14,000 kilometers to set up shop on another continent.
The ability to travel so far and wide is also an extremely smart way to make sure you never run out of territory. So next time you have the urge to call someone a brainless amoeba, just know that you're actually complimenting their intelligence.
This creature has 2 hot glue guns that shoot ultra-sticky goo out of its head. It has a retractable utility knife built into its mouth opening. And it comes in a range of richly colored velvet. Is this a crafter's dream or a cockroach's worst nightmare? This is the velvet worm. Onychophora, commonly known as the velvet worm, is a phylum of over 200 species of super soft, super secretive, super secretors. With their cuddly and plush-like appearance, the velvet worms are a little bit like cats. They have claws, they stalk their prey, and some can even be found hunting in packs. Sometimes having the help of another makes reaching your targets easier. Closely related to arthropods and sharing an evolutionary relationship with our favorite water bear, the tardigrade, velvet worms are darkness-loving terrestrial creatures. Onychophora are classified in two major subgroups, Parapatidae and Parapatopsidae.
Even though they likely diverged hundreds of millions of years ago, before the breakup of Pangaea, neither group has changed much since, making these creatures out of time a favorite among evolutionary biologists.
Velvet worm skin is covered in a flexible cuticle of chitin, the same tough protective substance that is the main component in the exoskeletons of arthropods like insects, spiders, and crustaceans. But unlike its arthropod cousins, these creatures are soft and supple, covered in scales that give it its unmistakable velvety suit.
Velvet worms can be from 5 millimeters to 15 centimeters long, and come in a wide range of fashionable colors.
They are most often found in fetching shades of orange, brown, black, and blue, with a few cave-dwelling species decked out in all white. Their velvety skin is prone to drying out, so they live exclusively in areas of high humidity in the southern hemisphere and around the equator.
They are so sensitive to moisture levels in the air that they become less active during dry periods.
But even if you search the tropical forest litter where they hang out, you might have a tough time finding one of these daylight-hating shy guys.
The most striking quality of the velvet worm is how it strikes both predators and prey by squirting them with 2 sticky streams of self-hardening slime.
Animals squirt for all kinds of reasons. Other than the obvious waste disposal and reproduction, animals will also use the power of the squirt for movement, like squids, as well as for defense, like the horned lizard that shoots blood out of its eyes. And for hunting, like the velvet worm.
This sticky slayer definitely takes the prize for most unique method of murder.
To locate its prey of crickets, spiders, beetles, termites, cockroaches, and other invertebrates, the predatory velvet worm uses its sensory antenna. Once located, the velvet worm does something truly unique. It squirts its prey with super sticky slime. The slime is held in large glands in its head segments, kinda like their versions of web shooters. When it's ready to attack, the velvet worm shoots its goo out of 2 openings, called oral papillae, immobilizing its victims.
Before we get into the absolutely horrifying way that the velvet worm slices into and liquefies its prey, we need to talk about the unique spray action of its slime.
The velvet worm doesn't just spray its slime straight outwards. The high-pressure power of its squirt, combined with the elasticity of its oral papillae, turn these openings into the equivalent of 2 out-of-control fire hoses. As a result, the slime oscillates as it sprays upwards of 30 centimeters, blanketing its snack in a layer of immobilizing goo.
This fast-action spray may seem to go against the otherwise slow nature of this beast.
But because of the syringe-like structure of the gland and small opening, this slowpoke slime-squirting muscles don't actually have to move very quickly to result in a powerful spray. When not being used, their rubbery goo guns fold inwards like accordions to await their next target.
The slime hardens almost instantly into a glassy texture when exposed to air. Once the prey is sealed in its glass house of death, the velvet worm goes in for the kill.
Using blade-like jaws that are tucked inside its mouth, the velvet worm slices its way into its prey's exoskeleton and injects it with digestive saliva, which contains mucus and digestive enzymes. Once the insides of its prey are liquefied, the velvet worm slurps them out like a milkshake, in true horror movie fashion.
Velvet worms also use their slime as self-defense against predators like birds, spiders, and centipedes. Hemprichi's coral snake, which lives north of the Amazon River, feeds almost exclusively on these squishy squirters.
And squishy they are. They are so flexible, in fact, that they can scrunch themselves into the tiniest crevices. Another trait that comes in handy when trying to elude predators.
Because of their elusive nature, not much is known about their behavior. But a study on one Australian species, Euparapetoides rowelli, showed that they are indeed capable of complex social behavior. Groups of up to 15 individuals with complex, female-led social hierarchies were found to live and hunt together, with dominant females feeding alone first.
Males of the same species will set out to scout out new areas to colonize, like prey-rich decomposing logs, and then secrete a pheromone to attract both males and females to it.
In addition to their super soaker-like slime throwers, velvet worms are also unique in that their young can be born in 3 different ways, depending on the species.
Some are oviparous, laying eggs like birds do. Some are ovoviparous, meaning they hatch eggs inside the body like some species of snakes. The most common form of reproduction for this phylum, though, is viviparous, meaning that they birth live young, just like us humans.
It seems that that's where our similarities with the velvet worm end, unless of course you're Peter Parker.
Would you look at these bouncing beauties? My deepest apologies to koalas, Crocodile Dundee, and Chris Hemsworth, but the honor of most iconic Australian obviously goes to these furry marsupial cuties. Let's hop to it and jump feet first into the wonderful world of kangaroos and wallabies.
Today, we're on Maria Island in Tasmania, just off the coast of the mainland. It's known to be a hotspot for a lot of endemic Tasmanian wildlife such as wombats, echidna, wallabies, pademelons, and even the Tasmanian devil.
Wallabies are members of the genus Macropus. Wallaroos make up the genus Osfranter, and a kangaroo is basically just a name for a very large wallaby or wallaroo. They're all part of the macropod family. In ancient Greek, macropod roughly translates to Bigfoot. I wonder where they got that name. There are 10 different Macropus species. Some are kangaroos and some are wallabies. But what's the difference? Well, basically, it comes down to size. If you find yourself standing face to face with a Macropus and they're below your eye level, you're probably hanging with a wallaby. They're the smallest. And if they're taller, it's a kangaroo. They're huge. And if your bud is somewhere between those two sizes, they're likely a wallaroo. Kind of the awkward middle child of the roo crew. Australia is obviously the #1 Macropus capital of the world. There are over 50 million kangaroos hopping around the mainland. That's almost 2 roos for every person. This boom is partly due to human interference. Early settlers drove almost all of their natural predators to extinction and transformed some of that harsh Australian brush into more Macropus-friendly landscapes. But some Australians think of them as pests, because they destroy crops and cause car accidents by hopping into the road. But hey, they were here first, humans. Respect the roo. Even though kangaroos pack a killer kick, they likely won't bite. They're herbivores. They don't even have canine teeth. Luckily, their molars are strong enough to crush up plant matter. Like cows and other ruminants, they regurgitate and chew their food twice. Then, they use the bacteria and fungi in the separate chambers of their very complex digestive system to turn bland greens into yummy nutrients. But enough about diet and geography and genus. You're here for one reason and one reason only: the hopping. Frogs and bunnies have nothing on these legendary hoppers. The best kangaroo jumps can take them 2 meters forward, 3 meters high, and reach speeds of 60 kilometers an hour.
So I gotta say, this is the first time that I've interacted with a mammal who's also bipedal, aside from other humans, of course. This is something that we share in common with these guys. With these very specialized feet, they can hop and jump and run at high speeds and prop themselves up with their tail and their front paws when they need to.
These animals are such expert bouncers that they actually conserve energy when hopping far distances at high speeds. The tendons in their legs act like springs. When they land, the tendons get compressed and then want to expand again right away. So the energy is mostly coming from their tendons, not their muscles. To handle these high-speed hops, Macropus developed muscular tails that keep them balanced. Their tails also help propel them forward for jumps. Think of it as their third leg. Their breathing is synchronized with their bouncing. When they jump, their lungs automatically empty, and when they land, their lungs fill with air. There's a lot of power behind those hops. Being able to hop very quickly across vast distances and turn locale plants into energy are the reasons kangaroos and wallabies do well in the Australian desert. Very few large mammals would be able to survive that barren environment, let alone thrive in it. The most powerful macropods are, of course, kangaroos. The red kangaroo is the largest. They can grow up to 2 meters tall and weigh 90 kilograms. They're members of the Ospranter genus, so they're more closely related to wallaroos than to other kangaroos. But how can we ignore this muscly macropod beast? These are the dudes that look like they ate a bowl of steroids for breakfast. Red kangaroos also love socializing. They've been spotted hanging out in groups as big as 1,000. Popular and beefy, these guys are total jocks. Former threats like the Tasmanian tiger and marsupial lion have gone extinct, so red kangaroos don't have any predators. But the baby joeys can be snatched up by eagles or dingoes. Here's where I could make a dingo ate my baby joke, but I won't subject you to my Australian accent. 2020 has been tough enough. The second biggest kangaroo after the red is the eastern grey. These kangaroos are just as tall as the red, but much thinner. They're super comfortable with humans because they happen to enjoy the same climate and land conditions as we do. Eastern grey kangaroos also enjoy socializing, but only in groups of 10 or less, far more exclusive than 1,000. By the way, a group of kangaroos is called a mob, so stay on their good side and never ask them about their business.
These are the Kangaroo Island kangaroos. As this species evolved on an island environment, they didn't really have any natural predators to face out there. So naturally they became a little bit less fearful. They didn't really develop that kind of anxious response too much because they didn't have to worry about natural predators. They became almost like a pygmy kangaroo. Being on an island, you tend to evolve to be smaller, and became more social because you had to deal with your neighbors. Gotta get friendly.
Then there's the wallaby. They're smaller and more solitary than their kangaroo cousins. This is a swamp wallaby. They don't necessarily live near swamps, but they sure do smell like they do. That's where they get their nickname, Stinker. There are several different wallaby species, and some have actually been successfully introduced to areas outside of Australia, including Hawaii, France, New Zealand, and the UK. Who knew wallabies were so worldly? If you're really lucky, you might come across one of the most beautiful members of the kangaroo family, the white wallaby. Off the southeast coast of Tasmania, on Bruny Island, there lives a colony of about 200 albino wallabies. This genetic mutation makes them sensitive to the sun, gives them poor eyesight, and makes them stick out like a sore thumb. Fortunately, their island is free of natural predators, allowing the white wallaby's population to thrive. since kangaroos, wallabies, and the frequently forgotten wallaroos are all marsupials. They carry their newborns in pouches. After just 1 month of pregnancy, the mother gives birth to a blind baby joey that weighs just 1 gram. Despite their tiny size and general uselessness, the joey's sense of smell and strong arms help them climb up their mama's body and into her pouch, where they'll stay for 5 to 11 months.
Oh, I can see it. He's kind of hanging to just to the right. So this little lady is pregnant with a little joey inside. And so she's got to eat lots to help him grow big and strong.
It'll shoot you, it'll stab you, it'll poison you. Nope, this isn't the suspect in an Agatha Christie novel. This is one of the most dangerous trees in the world. While its name may sound like child's play, this tree is anything but. This is the sandbox tree.
Today we're talking about Hura crepitans, a softwood tree that always chooses violence.
Otherwise known as the monkey pistol tree, possumwood, monkey's dinner bell, dynamite tree, or jabillo, the sandbox tree grows in almost all tropical areas of the Americas, especially in the Amazon. The name sandbox tree comes from the use of its ripe fruit as a container for sand, which was used as an ink blotter. Before blotting paper became more common, sand was standard on desks up till the mid-1800s and was used to absorb excess ink. After composing a letter, the writer would sprinkle the page with sand to soak it up.
According to accounts from the time, receiving a sand-filled letter was as annoying as it sounds. Understandably, this fell out of common practice by the late 1800s.
The sandbox tree is a member of Euphorbiaceae, commonly called the spurge family. The spurge family consists of about 7,500 flowering plants that live on every continent except Antarctica. Some famous spurge family cousins include the rubber tree, poinsettia, castor oil plant, and cassava.
But in the case of the sandbox tree, you can forget about the S in spurge. With all the ways it's itching to kill you, this tree is definitely part of the purge.
Everything about the sandbox tree just screams, you gon' die. The exploding fruit, the spines, the poison, just one look at it and you'll turn into a pillar of salt.
Okay, so maybe I exaggerated a little on that last one. But let's unpack the real duffel bag of weapons the sandbox tree has in its arsenal.
First, we have grenades in the form of exploding seed capsules. Don't be fooled by the adorable mini pumpkin-like fruit of the sandbox tree. These poser pumpkins pack a punch. Once they dry into seed capsules, they explode with a bang that has been compared to the blast of a pistol. The force of the explosion flings the seeds at upwards of 240 kilometers an hour and can send them shooting up to 45 meters.
The fastest pitch in baseball is around 160 kilometers an hour. So these trees are chucking out 2-centimeter seeds at around 50% faster than that.
These projectiles can very easily hurt any humans or livestock standing nearby. But luckily, it's pretty easy to predict when they'll go off, since they don't explode at night or during damp days. They need the heat and dry of the sun to set them off. The fruit is made up of 15 or 16 sections arranged around a center axis. The fruit will lose up to 64% of its moisture to reach a point when it becomes so dry that the sections violently split open and separate from the axis, throwing out the seeds.
In scientific terms, this is when it goes kablooey.
Firing seeds from the parent plant is more reliable than animal or wind dispersal, since the plant doesn't have to rely on outside forces to carry the seeds away. Exploding seed dispersal also reduces competition, with offspring being flung as far away from the parent as possible. One study suggests that for these reasons, exploding seeds may occur in so many different taxonomic groups. Go check out our squirting cucumber video if you need more proof.
Okay, back to the sandbox tree's deadly arsenal. We're moving on to the stabbing bark, which kind of resembles a medieval torture device.
Nothing says "don't climb me" like an entire trunk covered in powerful 1-inch spikes. These conical bark knives are half an inch wide at the base and taper to a needle-like point.
So what does it feel like to climb this tree? It's like bear hugging a bundle of bayonets.
The spikes cover the tree from top to bottom. They are so thick on some individuals that their bases touch, forming a suit of spiked, impenetrable armor. You know, just to make sure you really don't get any ideas about climbing it.
The sandbox tree's third weapon is poison. The fruit is so poisonous that one bite will have you questioning your life choices. Expect violent cramps, vomiting, and everyone's favorite, diarrhea.
The sap of the tree is also a poison that creates a nasty red skin rash on contact. If you get it in your eyes, it may even cause you to go temporarily blind. It's so toxic that its sap was used by some Carib indigenous peoples as the poison for their darts.
Despite it plotting to kill you, some parts of this deadly tree can be put to good use.
Oil extracted from the seeds is said to be a great purgative, if, you know, puking your guts out can be considered great. The leaves have been used to treat eczema, while other extracts may be used to treat conditions from rheumatoid arthritis to intestinal worms. Its seed oil is even being investigated as an insecticide. Due to its highly efficient seed dispersal, the sandbox tree is primed for mass expansion. In Tanzania, in East Africa, where it was once introduced as a shade tree, it's now considered an invasive species.
So I guess in addition to wanting to kill you, the sandbox tree has even larger ambitions. Total world domination. If you live in the tropics, be sure to give this dangerous tree a wide berth.
When you see a shoebill, you might think that they look like dinosaurs. And the awesome thing is, they actually are dinosaurs. Shoebills, like all birds, are modern dinosaurs within the clade Aviale in Dinosauria. But more so than other birds, shoebills really look the part. They get their name from their almost comically oversized shoe-like bill. The rest of their body is also really strange, looking like a hodgepodge of different creatures. They have very ostrich or cassowary-like legs, a stork-like body, and a squarish head that looks like it might belong on a dollar bird, but with the flair of a mandarin duck. And their call? Well, the word jackhammer comes to mind. Shoebills are the only member of their genus, and the only other members of their family are hammerkops. They are also super weird looking and are named as such because they're essentially hammerhead birds. While people often call shoebills shoebill storks, they're actually more closely related to herons, ibises, and pelicans, and their only confirmed ancestor is Golithia, a giant bird who measured over 2 meters tall. Shoebills are endemic to eastern Africa and live in swamps from Sudan to Zambia, though some vagrants have been spotted as far west as the Congo River. Shoebills are quite large. Adults can reach well over 1 meter in height, and the tallest one ever found measured 152 centimeters tall. About up to here. In order to carry their large bodies, they have huge wings, measuring from 230 to 260 centimeters wide. LeBron James, for comparison, has an arm span of 218 centimeters, quite a bit less than an adult shoebill. These massive wings are great for soaring, and because of their large size, they flap their wings much slower than most other species of bird, only flapping them about 150 times a minute. Despite their large stature, they only weigh between 4 and 7 kilos. A testament to their light, hollow bone. They may look clunky, but their bills are deadly effective tools. The edges of their bills are razor sharp, which is helpful, as they often will decapitate their prey when hunting. They'll also use their sharpened bill to mow down grass to expose prey.
If you look closely, you'll notice their bill isn't entirely rounded, and their upper mandible forms a very sharp nail at the end. They use this to stab and impale their prey. Wicked. They also have very large feet, and their middle toe can be up to 18 centimeters long. This helps a lot when you live in the swamp and spend hours of the day completely still, perched on floating debris, waiting for prey. Shoebills are very solitary and spend their days looking for muddy swamps with mixed vegetation, and then they stand around and wait for prey to swim by.
Their prey of choice, lungfish and bashir.
They have been known to hunt in areas preyed upon by hippos, as hippos will scare the fish and force them to surface.
Easy pickings for a shoebill.
Though if a fish refuses to surface, shoebills will use their bill to dig them out of any burrows they might be hiding in. If you couldn't guess, these constantly pissed-looking birds are very territorial when it comes to nesting. They nest very far from other shoebills and will fight any competing shoebills and predators like crocodiles that get too close.
Shoebills are monogamous, which is adorable, but they're not great parents.
After their eggs hatch, they tend to only raise the strongest baby, leaving the others to perish. Highlander rules, you know? The babies start fighting each other very early on to be selected as the chosen one. Shoebills reach sexual maturity at age 3 and can live over 30 years in the wild. Between 50 and 80% of their population can be found in South Sudan, with around 5,000 of them living there.
They are listed as vulnerable, and their numbers are declining due to hunting, habitat destruction, and capture for the zoo trade.
Their amazing jackhammer sound is one of the few sounds that they produce. And they use it to communicate greetings and threats. But with shoebills, the greetings are usually pretty threatening.
This aquatic wonder can be best described as completely unbothered. It takes its time, gliding leisurely through the waves and occasionally even sunbathing on the surface. Predators can tear chunks out of it, and it just keeps on keeping on. It doesn't even have a bone to pick with the fact that its status as biggest bony fish has been recently toppled by a close relative. This is the sunfish. The ocean sunfish, otherwise known as the mola mola, is the second largest bony fish in the seas. But coming in second doesn't mean that the species isn't preposterously massive. Sunfishes can easily reach a ton in weight, but the heaviest on record was over 2 tons, and was an almost perfect circle at 3.3 meters in diameter. Yup, it's round as a silver dollar, but about 100 times bigger, as heavy as a large giraffe. Until recently, the sunfish was believed to be the absolute biggest bony fish in the world. That record was upset by the discovery of a specimen of Mola alexandrini, also known as the bumphead sunfish, which weighed more than 2,700 kilograms. Along with ocean sunfish, this species is one of the 5 extant species of the Mollidae family. It makes sense that the word mola comes from the Latin for millstone, which perfectly describes these mega-heavy, disc-like fish. Despite looking like a bunch of ancient artifacts, this group is actually among the youngest in the ocean. They made their grand appearance in the seas about 50 million years later than most other modern fish. Sunfish are known for their iconic derpy appearance. They have bulging heads, big, vacant eyes, and 4 beak-like teeth that can't quite meet, giving them the look of a forever mouth breather. But the teeth that really matter for the sunfish are in their pharyngeal jaws, located in their throats. Pharyngeal teeth have evolved independently in many species of bony fish and are used for food capture and separating wanted from unwanted food. In the case of the sunfish, their pharyngeal teeth are used to trap and swallow the jellyfish that make up a large portion of their diet. Whatever particles the sunfish doesn't want to eat are then jetted out of its mouth. It can also use this jet force to defend itself from predators and even propel itself to make a super slow escape. Being large doesn't always mean you're slow in the animal kingdom. If you don't believe me, just try and outrun a hippo. But in the case of this underwater giant, the sunfish's enormous size does really make it seem like it's swimming through molasses. Its top speed is a breakneck 3 kilometers an hour.
Unlike other fish that have tails formed from the caudal fin that acts like a propeller to push the fish through the water, sunfish have a pseudotail that steers more like a rudder. Called the clavus, this pseudotail doesn't grow alongside the rest of the fish, which gives the sunfish its round shape. To propel itself through the water, the sunfish flaps its exaggerated back and belly fins like wings. This is similar to the flapping motion of these same fins in its cousins, the puffer and porcupine fish. Sunfish can be found lolling about the globe in tropical and temperate waters, though they can tolerate temperatures as low as 2 degrees Celsius. So in theory, they could be anywhere other than the Arctic and Antarctic oceans. If they get chilly, sunfish simply float to the surface, lay on their sides, and soak up some rays. If you didn't pick up on it by now, that's why they are nicknamed sunfish. Laying on their sides on the surface actually serves more than one purpose. Their big, slimy bodies can be home to over 40 types of parasites. So by floating on the surface, they invite seabirds to snack on the creepy crawlies that cover their skin. To prevent their eyes from being plucked out by indiscriminate seagulls, the sunfish is equipped with a specialized muscle that allows them to pull their eyes deep inside their sockets.
Hey everyone, we have exciting news! We're thrilled to announce the release of Animalogic's very first book, Strange Creatures. This book dives into the most incredible animals we've ever featured on the show, with each chapter packed with my illustrations and stunning full-color images. It's a fun and engaging way to learn about the animal kingdom, and a perfect tool to spark kids' interest in science. Each chapter breaks down an animal's biology, behavior, and all the coolest facts you need to know about these fascinating creatures. Animalogic's Strange Creatures is a must-have addition to your own library, or the perfect gift for an animal lover this upcoming holiday season.
Click the link in the description to check it out, and if you can, order a copy. It would mean the world. Thank you so much, and I hope that you love the book. When being groomed by overzealous seabirds, some of the flesh will inevitably come away with the parasite. But that doesn't seem to bother the sunfish too much at all. Apparently, they aren't even too fussed when predators take a bigger bite either. 'Tis but a scratch. Their large size and very thick skin keeps most would-be predators at bay, but sunfish are still occasionally preyed upon by sharks, orcas, and sea lions. When they tire of their twisted little games, the sea lions will abandon the sunfish to sink to the bottom and die. Mammals, why are we always such jerks? It may come as no surprise that one of the greatest threats to adult sunfish is another mammal, Homo sapiens. Boat propellers and rudders can easily kill a floating mola, and drift gill nets can damage their skin and protective mucus layer and fill their gills with air. Plastic bags, too, are especially dangerous for molas because the floating bag can be mistaken for a delicious jellyfish. Once ingested, the bag can easily choke the mola or clog its stomach, preventing it from being able to eat. Despite the fact that these surface-loving giants are easy to spot, the research on sunfish isn't actually that extensive. We don't know, for example, how fast they grow, or how long they live in the wild. Because they live out in the vast open ocean, we're also still trying to grasp the size of their populations around the world, and even where they spawn. We do know that females will lay up to 300 million eggs every breeding season. The babies start their lives as tiny larvae less than half a centimeter in size. But how they manage to survive to the behemoths we find gliding through the ocean is still an alluring mystery.
Understandings are first gained by seeing things at first hand, watching, experiencing.
Metamorphosis.
Metamorphosis, when one thing becomes another.
Metamorphosis.
When we talk about growth, we usually think of growing up.
Metamorphosis.
But the long road of growth is not just up. If it were, it would mean that this little baby would someday look like this.
This process is a truly mind-boggling phenomenon shared by over 65% of all animal species on Earth, the majority of which are insects.
Insects develop from young to adult in 3 different ways. They all start from eggs, of course. Silverfish illustrate the first method. The young are much like the adult except in size. There is no metamorphosis.
So many insects undergo metamorphosis that it would be easier to count those that don't than those that do. 2 common insects you may be unlucky enough to see regularly that don't metamorphosize are silverfish and bristletails.
There are 2 broad categories of metamorphosis, complete and incomplete.
Incomplete metamorphosis, which means no basic change in structure from nymph to adult.
Incomplete metamorphosis is when an insect changes in several stages called instars or nymphs, depending on the species.
These changes are often very gradual, and some species can have up to 15 nymphal stages.
They start as eggs, then they hatch, and at the end of each stage they molt. During molting, the insect separates from their cuticle, their equivalent to skin. They begin to secrete materials that will form their new cuticle, while their old one eventually disintegrates and they break out of it. They're soft at first, but their new cuticle hardens up within a few hours.
During this process, they gain new features.
Cockroaches and crickets, for example, gain wings through molting, and their sexual organs only become functional after their final molt.
The young, called a nymph, has no wings. It gets wings in its final molt.
Because of this gradual development, adult insects that undergo incomplete metamorphosis tend to look like their babies, but with extra features. Like a Pokemon's final form. Except for maybe Magikarp.
Complete metamorphosis is where things start to get really interesting.
Complete metamorphosis shows 4 distinct changes from egg to adult. The cycle starts when, for example, an adult Mexican bean beetle lays a cluster of eggs.
Species that undergo complete metamorphosis go through 4 distinct phases: egg, larva, pupa, and adult.
Each one of these life stages serves a specific purpose. The goal of a larva is to eat as much as possible so that it can grow and develop, while the goal of an adult is to reproduce. In fact, in some species, the adults don't even eat. They spend their entire adult lives trying to reproduce, fueled by the energy stored by their larval stage.
Larvae hatch from the eggs. The larval stage is mainly a feeding stage.
Goliath beetles can live for up to 2 years in the larval stage and get particularly swole in preparation to pupate.
Now this one is 33 grams exactly now.
The adults generally lay their eggs near a food source so that when they hatch, the larvae can quickly begin to stuff themselves with as much food as they can eat.
As they grow, they molt, and once they've developed enough, they pupate.
When all of the black widow's eggs have been eaten, the maggots pupate.
During this stage, they develop into their final form, adults. Some insects, like moths, form cocoons out of silk or poop to protect themselves as they go through this radical change. Butterflies, on the other hand, don't form protective cocoons, and instead their exterior forms a hard chrysalid. And like butterflies, they can be breathtaking. Some even look like gold.
The chrysalis is a resting stage, during which the animal changes into a beautiful butterfly.
During this stage, the larvae release enzymes that dissolve their own tissue.
Once broken down, the adult structures begin to form out of tiny clusters of cells called imaginal discs. These imaginal discs are cells that are present when the larvae are born. They are attached to their epidermis by a thin stalk and remain dormant throughout their larval stage. Though once awoken during the pupal stage, they go to work.
What they're able to do is almost too fantastical to be true.
Once they're activated, the cells begin to divide very quickly to make more cells, eventually building entire structures like wings in just a few days.
Even more fantastical is the fact that these elements are developed independently of one another and then attached later.
So a wing may be grown in one area and then moved into place, somewhat like assembling a car. You don't have to build each part where it's going to end up. So a leg could be formed near the head and then moved down to its thorax.
Even more fantastical is the fact that some butterflies can remember things from when they were caterpillars.
A caterpillar is a growing up stage in the life of a moth or butterfly.
A group of scientists did an experiment where they would emit a particular smell and then administer a small shock to a caterpillar. The caterpillar would learn to avoid the smell in the future. But the surprising thing is that after the caterpillars went through their metamorphosis, in which their bodies are completely dissolved and reformed, when presented with the same smell, the adult moths would freak out. This suggests that parts of their nervous system have continuity through their radical body change.
By the way, do you know how to tell a butterfly from a moth? Well, the best way is to look closely at the animal's antennae, or feelers.
Roughly 98% of all insects undergo metamorphosis, but it wasn't always this way.
For millions of years, ametabolic animals, or animals that don't metamorphosize, reigned supreme. These early insects hatched as miniature versions of the adults, but that all started to change around 300 million years ago when a new player emerged.
These new insects hatched with bodies that were radically different than their adult forms.
Not only did they look different, but they behaved differently too. They ate different food and occupied different niches. Soon, they started to change their shape to best exploit the resources. For example, some newborns began to look more like worms in order to dig better and find meals underground, while the adults became larger and evolved tools for defense against predators, better vision for flying, color vision to find the tastiest food, and so on.
Since insect generations are so short, new adaptations can evolve very quickly.
Eggs began to hatch earlier and earlier. These pre-nymphs got better and better at fending for themselves and didn't need to stay in the egg as long. These became known as larvae. Though despite how adept these new larvae were at finding food and surviving outside the egg, they still lacked the sexual organs they needed to reproduce. Instead of a slow, gradual transformation, gaining sexual organs as they matured, these insects underwent brief periods of accelerated change, what we now know as pupation. With their various life stages able to dominate different niches, ametabolic insects, who could only specialize in one area and had to compete with their own young for survival, were pushed out of the market.
Insects aren't alone. Amphibians and some fish also undergo metamorphosis.
Frogs, salamanders, and all other amphibians can live on land, but they lay their eggs in the water.
The adult toad spends most of his life on land, but when spring comes, he returns to the pond for the mating season.
When the eggs hatch, the babies emerge with external gills and some fish-like features like fins and a lateral line, an organ that detects vibrations in the water and changes in water pressure. Frogs and toads begin as tadpoles, and as they grow, their legs appear under their gill sacs and their mouths become larger. They start to transition from vegetarian to carnivore, and their intestines lose 75% of their length as a result. They lose their lateral line and instead develop binocular vision, which gives them depth perception. Their tails stay around a bit longer than the rest, but ultimately are lost. Depending on the species, this transition from legless vegetarian swimmers to hopping carnivorous amphibians can take between 2 and 8 months to complete. Some salamanders, like the axolotl, don't undergo a full metamorphosis and stay in their aquatic form instead, retaining their external gills throughout their lives.
Amphibian metamorphosis is controlled by a single hormone called thyroxine, and we still really don't know how it works.
This single hormone tells tail muscles to die, tells limbs to grow, tells intestines to shrink, and makes lateral lines completely disappear.
All that from a single hormone.
I'd like to know more about different kinds of hormones.
Some species of fish also undergo metamorphosis controlled by thyroxine, though not nearly as many fish metamorphosize as insects, as their environment doesn't change all that much.
That said, the fish that do change their strategies as they mature.
Flatfish are born symmetrical and swim around like regular fish, but as they age, their eyes slowly start migrating to one side of their head so that they can eventually stop swimming and spend the rest of their lives on the ocean floor. Eels have 4 stages of metamorphosis, and their larvae are hands down the most mesmerizing larvae in the animal kingdom. In some species, they can stay at this stage for over 2 years, looking for nutrients as they grow and develop.
Salmon undergo metamorphosis because they are anadromous.
They battle their way upstream against swift currents, seeking quiet waters where they may spawn.
Their lives begin in freshwater. Then they go out to sea, and finally they return to freshwater to spawn and die. They start out as alevins. During this stage, they survive off a yolk sac that is attached to them out of the egg. When they finish the yolk, they swim to the surface, fill their swim bladders with oxygen, and begin to look for food. In this stage, they're called fries. As the fries migrate to the ocean, they get larger, grow scales, and turn silver.
They mature in the ocean before returning to the stream from whence they came.
They stop eating and begin to make the struggle upstream. Once they've reached their destination, the males develop a hooked nose to fight each other for mating rights.
After they spawn, they die. Metamorphosis is how most things on this planet get by, yet despite this, it's far too fantastical to describe it as common.
The astonishing change that takes place in this phase of the life cycle is known as metamorphosis.
It's a squirrel. It's a bird. It's a kite? No! It's the vegetarian night stalker of Southeast Asia.
Today, we're in the primate uncanny valley.
We have so much in common with these wide-eyed weirdos, but we're also so different. They glide, they have comb teeth, and they're 5 times lighter than your head.
What mysteries do they hold? And what can we learn from them? This is the Strangest